Human beings exist in stories, in the stories that we tell. For example, architecture. When someone makes a building, all the buildings that are behind me right now, each one of them was trying to tell a story. When you go into a store, it's got what we call a brand. But what is the brand? The brand is the story that they're telling. They want that when the clients come in, they love that story and it's a familiar story to them. And that's the place they want to buy their lunch or buy their groceries or buy their clothing. It's all about the story that they're telling. When you go into a person's house, so why you chose that carpet, why you chose that table, why you chose those pictures, it's all telling a story. One example of storytelling is when you meet a person, you go to their home, and you see that they have dedicated the walls of their house not to artwork, but to pictures of their children. It's a story about our children being the most important thing. Now, I've interviewed a lot of those couples, and I've discovered that they were both from families that didn't pay much attention to their kids. And so now their house is telling the story of kids being the most important thing, while I've been to other homes that are covered in artwork and no wall of kids. And they grew up in a home where kids were everything. Kids were like the most important thing in the house. And so when they grew up and made their own homes, they put up artwork instead of a wall of kids. We all exist in stories. In fact, the Jewish people exist in the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Cultures exist in national stories. America, with all of its stories, wars they've been through, the development of the different cities, the going west. There's a certain story about those who went to the western areas of the United States. It's all couched in stories. You can go to Disneyland and go to like the out west part of Disneyland, or you can go into Pirates of the Caribbean during the time of the pirates, years ago. Everything exists in stories. The Jewish people have a story. Our story is the story of our leaving Egypt. That was the foundation of our nation. That's what we're made of, is that original story of leaving Egypt. And we even have a mitzvah to tell the story. And that is the story that gives the context for our people as a Jewish people. We also have the story of anti-Semitism. In fact, we have Jewish holidays that are based solely on the salvation we had at the hands of the Gentiles. And that is a theme that comes up throughout, is there's a story of us being the downtrodden, the oppressed, the expelled, the killed. That's part of the national story. But we also have stories about our own life. We live inside our stories. And so whatever happened growing up, relationship to the parents relationship to us, siblings, stuff that happened in school, all of that developed the story that we tell about our life. We live inside that story. But once you live inside a story, it's very hard to see anything outside of that story. But in fact, there is a lot outside of the story. I mean, think about it. The story you tell is based on, the history of your life and your background. But what if you were born 100 yards away? Okay, maybe it would have been a similar story, but it would definitely be a different story if you were born to a different home 100 yards away. Well, what if you were born 200 miles away? What if you were born 2,000 miles away? I mean, your story would just get more and more different. Well, that means that the story that we're telling is quite limited. In the possible you get two major things. One is you get to see your story. But I mean, not just see it from within, you get to see it from a distance, like objectively. You get to actually see the story and look at it and just say like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been telling this story. How long am I planning on telling this story? This is a boring story. That's why it's called the possible you, because it's the possible you as opposed to the predictable you inside that story. And the other thing you get is, and this is the life upgrade that we're offering, this is what we're doing in the Possible You, is creating this incredible upgrade to your life. And that is to be able to choose what stories you'd like to be telling from now on. The whole world occurs in speech. The stories you tell are speech, inward speech, inside speech. And the stories that you can now create, Abara Kedabara. I create Abara Kedabara as I speak. And you can actually create stories that you love and live inside the narratives and the stories that you want to tell going forward into your life, into a beautiful, empowered, loving, connected, healthy, and wealthy, and holy life going forward. Looking forward to hosting you at the Possible You Seminar.